Hi, I'm Greg Sizemore, president and founder of the Construction Users Roundtable, commonly called CURT. CURT is an organization that deals with primarily the owner interest in the industrial construction space while engaging significant industry partners, contractors, subcontractors, etc. We wrestle with things like safety improvement, productivity improvement, lean project delivery, modularization, and a host of other topics that are important to project success, particularly in the owner community. This is called Construction Connections, and it's powered by CURT, and its purpose is to bring resources, perspectives, and experiences of our guests to you, our listener. And we are so pleased today to have my longtime friend and industry colleague, Mr. Greg Fox. Greg, thank you for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. I'm excited for, the next hour or so of conversation with you about my favorite industry, the built industry.
Indeed. And we're gonna do a deep dive here in just a second. Let me tell you a little bit about Greg Fox. He works at Miller Valentine, which is a highly regarded regional contractor headquartered here in Cincinnati, and he serves as its vice president for lean construction and facilities. I think I said that right, didn't I, Greg? There's way more responsibility there that I see, but he's responsible for lean training and for project teams, new project pursuits with owners who are really seeking a collaborative lean project delivery experience. Greg's worked in academia with our joint alma mater, the University of Cincinnati. He's worked as an owner at Procter & Gamble, and a long time here now as a general contractor. Altogether, way over 30 years of service, where he is highly regarded professional colleague in a lot of organizations and seen as a go-to when it comes to lean project delivery. So we're going to jump right into it. And as I mentioned, one of the purposes of this podcast is to get perspectives, experiences, and resources to glean those from our guests so that you, our listener and viewer, can become a more well-informed decision maker, or at least create some curiosity about the subjects that we raise. And again, if you'd like to learn more about CURT and explore whether it might be a good fit for you, we invite you to the website. It's very simple. It's simply CURT.org. That's CURT.org. And on there, you can find contact information, including emails and phone numbers. You're welcome to call the office, speak to any of our staff, and we'll explore together whether this organization is a good fit for you and your organization. But right now, we're going to get into our time together with Greg Fox, a vice president for lean construction at the highly regarded Miller Valentine Corporation here in Cincinnati. Greg, you have experienced the industry from both the owner side and the contractor side. Where do you see these clash points? I hear often from owners, projects cost too much. I hear often from contractors, the margins are way too thin. It's not a good business to be into. So something seems to be slightly off kilter here. We're not going to fix it today, but we're going to comment on it today. So what do you think each may misunderstand about the other?
Yeah, Greg, I've spent my whole career, right, working both for an owner and a contractor, trying to bridge that gap. And when I was on the owner's side, what I found that really worked well was if the contractors and your service providers, the entire project team, if they understand the business case and if they understand the higher purpose of the building, they tend to provide a higher quality service. They're more connected to, the owner's objectives. They're not just the result of 3 bids and a buy, right? They're part of an integrated team. And many times these teams are brought on just when it's time to build the building. So they think they're building a building, right? What I have found is if you, on the front end, bring people in to understand the business case, understand the product they're going to be making or the service that they're going to be providing, and they understand that their work is serving a much higher purpose, those teams tend to mold together better than when you just hire someone through a hard bid RFP response, but when you select a partner and you respect the people that are on the team, you tell them why the project is being built. And what I have found in our industry, right, our builders think we're just building a building, but in reality,
Mhm.
right, we're building the next innovative cancer research facility, or we're building a warehouse that distributes products to millions of consumers across the world,
Mhm.
or we're building a roadway, right, that it's not just a roadway, it gives people access to things that they've not seen before and family experiences. And so when you connect the project team to that higher purpose, everything else tends to fall in place. And if you involve them on the front end in a meaningful way, not just in a way of I'm selecting you to build my building, right? I'm selecting you to be part of this higher purpose. They work together to identify better methods. They both attack the cost problem that you're talking about, right? Because they understand that if they don't get to that cost, they don't have a project, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as you build that type of structure or organization, everybody ends up making more money. So the contractors don't have to complain about the lower margin. The owners get to have more visibility into the cost and understand why things cost what they are. And it's not just a bid, right? It's an understanding of the scope. And when
Yeah.
you take that effort on the front end, those two organizations connect in a much more meaningful way. And then everybody leaves typically saying, you know what, I want to do that again. Now, I come from the lean world, and I favor that we do things in the lean methodology, but there's other ways of doing that as well, right? There's design build models, there's CM models, and even if you are designing, bidding, and building, if you go through that, purpose driven construction, you end up with a better result. And the owners that are taking time to spend that on the front end, they're getting the brightest and the best contractors, and they're getting the most successful projects.
Let me do a little deeper dive on that, Greg. In terms, how do you actually what does it look like when you're creating um, two entities into one initiative? You said, yeah,
Mhm.
you share the purpose, you share the higher purpose. It motivates the individuals. You keep the eye. What else? You mentioned, I think, transparency with respect to cost. How much do you really reveal one to the other? How do you build that trust in your team building exercise with a new project, a new owner,
Yeah.
perhaps, or
Yeah. So, again, leaning on my lean background, right?
yeah.
The There's a few methods within that, and this doesn't have to only be done on lean, but as you build the team and as you add team members, the orientation and the respect for their, siloed skill, if you will, right?
Mhm.
If we can connect that expertise across the project team. So in the industry, sometimes you hear people talking about let's break down the barriers between engineering, construction, owner,
Always.
mechanical, electrical. And
Yeah.
I work closely with Dr. Venegas, who I know you know, and everyone
Yep.
on that's
Jorge.
listening
Mhm.
probably knows. Mr. Mr. Jorge Venegas. We always stress the importance of those silos are vitally important. Their expertise, right? Their
Right.
capability, their capacity. And if you can connect those silos, don't break them down, connect them. And if you can do that early on through respect for their skill and team building events and bringing people into what we call the big room in the lean world, or the colo, which stands for
Yes.
co-location. If you
Okay.
bring all those parties together and that purpose is clear, most engineers and contractors are driven, really driven to deliver what the owner is expecting. They don't like to fail, right?
Right.
So when you do that on the front end and connect those silos, those are the events, the efforts, and helping each other understand what you're bringing to the table. when you do that on the front end and get your project off to a healthy start, the results are, they just compound as you work through the
Right.
project. And
W- w-
and
What
and
is
I've got
what
team
would
members.
yeah, go ahead.
I've got team members, on some of our project teams, Greg, that when they walk away, they say things like, "That's my brother from a different mother," and
Yeah.
they really walk away in a healthy state after a really stressful project, but they enjoy it versus being felt like they got beat down by the owner or they
Mhm.
got, disrespected by the architect or engineer, whatever. They truly feel like they were part of a higher purpose.
So not every owner out there is an ideal candidate for this approach. What
Hmm.
characteristics of owners do you think they need to take a good hard look at if this approach works? And as you've indicated, it has. It's what's made Miller Valentine an organization that has an outstanding reputation in the region and in the industry. What are those characteristics that owners need to take a good hard look in the mirror about
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah,
to
Greg.
project?
I mean, Greg, this is a great question. And we spend a lot of time when I was on the owner's side, I spent a lot of time figuring out what profile would fit with the P&G teams.
Right,
And now that I'm a contractor, I spend a lot of time just the opposite of that. Which owners, right, are we going to fit with and our people
right.
are going to enjoy working with and want
That's
to work for them again? 85% of our business is repeat client. So we do a pretty good job of, lack of a better term, Greg, of screening the owners that we want to work
mhm,
for. And the
mhm.
profile we're looking for is number one, a deep understanding of their technical operation service that they're providing so they can transfer that to us so we can design and build them a better facility, right? So having that knowledge up front, and having an inquiry and a selection process that really decides on criteria, not on just price. What's your availability of the experts to build my building? What's your reach with your reach and your approach to the market to hire trade partners? What is your ability to, understand the fluctuation and the things that happen in the industry like tariffs and price increases and cost of fuel and how can you articulate them? And an owner that has a funding process that is progressive so that they fund on the beginning to better what we call validate the project. So they have a project, they have a challenge that they're trying to solve, right? Whether it's production cost or innovation or distribution cost, and they're constantly trying to improve their operation, right? So if they have a process that allows us to validate what they're thinking and then move to through the different gates of funding and not just go and say, is my project 100 million? If I'm under 100 million, let's go fund it. It's to figure out that I'm going to spend, call it a couple million to figure out maybe it's not 100 million, it's only 80 million. So that $2 million that you spend on the front end that you thought was maybe 100 million, because if you go to market with $100 million budget, you're probably going to get $110 million response, right? So,
So
but if
true.
but if you spend that upfront money and you have a funding process that supports that, right? And that's critical that the owner has a progressive funding process where they do front end engineering, then they do validation, then they do definition, then they do execution. If you try to rush through that front end, we have a term in lean that we say go slow to move fast.
Mm,
And if you spend that time and those and and Greg, these are not years we're talking about. These are months, sometimes weeks, depending on the size of the project. So when you invest in that front end of the project, you end up paying less. And I don't want to say always less, but you get the right scope for the right cost. It's not
And you
always
sure get
less.
an understanding of where the money's going,
Exactly. Better understanding of what you're investing in.
of what you're investing in. You know,
Yeah.
you spent years focused on lean principles, Greg, and where do you still see waste? We
Mhm.
hear it from the trades, the rework, or maybe it's quality, or maybe it's, I call it supply chain congestion, trying to get the right
Mhm.
stuff at the right place at the right time from the right vendor at the right cost, blah, blah, blah. Where do you still see a lot of waste in our business? It seems that we're ripe for improvement, but we just seem also like we move like molasses in the wintertime at about
Mhm.
that speed, like the snail trying to get to the ark as we're
Nah,
improving. Where do you see in waste? Where is the
yeah,
low hanging
Greg,
fruit?
the two largest forms of waste that we see continuously, even on some of our lean projects, right? They kind of bookend the project. On the front end, there's a lot of waste in the what we call overproduction, and we create lots of drawings. We finish design without knowing what it's going to cost. We bring in people that are great designers. They have great intent, but they don't connect with the other end of the industry, which, by the way, spends about 90% of your project. The
Yeah.
engineering side spends about 5 to 10, maybe 15. And we let them work in that silo that we talked about. So there's a lot of overproduction. And we may design something that looks good at that point in time, but by the time it goes to the market, we find out that joists are no longer available and we should be using some type of other material, or
Hmm.
concrete cement price has, inflated. So maybe we need to back off some of the concrete materials. So if you bring the right people to the table on that front end of the project and understand the market, understand the dynamics of what you're trying to build, and the experts and resources you need to bring together to build your building. If you do that on the front end and they look at not only the cost of that building, but also its impact over the life cycle of the building, is it adaptable, right? Can it accept new innovation, or will I have to completely renovate to accept some new type of innovation like automatic storage systems or some type of AI, in conveyors and case packing and production? If you bring that group in early, you eliminate a lot of waste on that front end of the project. And on the other end of the project, you mentioned it, and contractors talk about it a lot. We still have a lot of waste, and the most expensive resource on the project is our labor.
People.
Labor is typically, 40-50% of any capital project. And they typically are the least um, asked for input, the lowest level of contribution to the front end of the work, right? In a typical delivery model. When you bring them in early and you talk about, how do I avoid waiting? How do I minimize transportation on the site? How do I make sure we don't have too much inventory causing workflow problems on the site, like too much steel at one time or the
Yeah.
equipment coming in too early? And then we focus on making all of their motion be productive. The
Hmm.
higher we can get their productivity, there's always going to be supportive work, right? There's always going to be transportation. But if you can minimize that based on the workflow, whether you're using tact planning or last planner systems, creating that flow on the project, right, is really important. And I believe project teams, management teams, many times they miss their higher purpose. They are a servant leader to the craft worker, right? And they should be providing them the tools, the site logistics plans, and working on things that make that labor productive. Instead, they're off creating 10,000 line item schedules,
Yeah.
that nobody can read, or they're working on submittals for months and months, to appease the architect and the owner. And if you can avoid some of that work and get them focused on the productivity of the worker, then you eliminate both ends of that waste. You don't overproduce at the beginning, but you do overproduce on the end, right? You increase their productivity.
Interesting. Interesting. From your perspective, um, lean is something that you've picked up, become quite the expert on, both in the owner community and contractor community. What do you think the next generation of lean project delivery looks like? And how do we tie that up with project predictability? Any comments about that, Greg?
Yeah.
What does
So
next gen
yeah,
lean look like, or what
when
should
you
it
look
look
at
like?
yeah, what should it look like? And what we number one, if you truly are working in a lean world, you're constantly improving. So I don't know that I can define, Greg, what it should look like. But what I do know is that it needs to look better than it did on the last project.
Good point.
And we have a process that we call learn from experience, that we actually learned and I learned at Procter and Gamble, and we continue to apply it at Miller Valentine. We do it on all of our projects now. But if you are able to recognize, right, and be aware of the things that didn't go well
Mhm.
and be willing to accept new thinking, new ways of doing work, whether it be with AI in some of the design and permitting and some of those things that make teams more efficient, or whether it be in how you focus on project flow and your respect for the other trades, right? Many times a framing company feels like they're bothered by the electrician that wants to rough in their framing. But if those two can sit down and talk, they probably got the same objective, right?
Mhm.
So if we can create that workflow and create that culture where they want to help each other, that's the way the project should look. And then not being scared, right, to make a mistake and learn from it and then explore root cause analysis on why that happened, and then the next project will look better. And that's where I say, the to increase that predictability, to actually improve, if you can again go back to connecting all the silos, and then if you can really open up on these learn from experiences, and if you perform them at the right time of the project, you can't do a learn from experience when the project is complete.
Right.
You got to do it after front end, and then you got to do it after validation, and you got to do it after definition, and you got to do it constantly, plus deltas and things like
Yeah,
that throughout the execution. And if that's the culture you created, that is the future of project delivery that I look forward to. And we're getting there, but it is a constant journey, Greg. And
it
I
is.
don't, I can't say this is the way to do it, but I can say I want it to be better than last time.
Yeah, boy, that's great. When you collect all the data and it's
Mhm.
analyzed, whether with AI or, and by the way, I've heard a lot of people when they refer to AI as not artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence, giving the
Right.
human element, the kingpin position, and but using augmented
Yeah.
intelligence for effective
W-
decision making. Kind
Well,
of like,
I love it because we all have blind spots, right?
yeah, right.
And I am the last to say, well, I didn't do that right. You know what I mean? And I've been doing lean practice for, 30 years, right? But
Yeah,
when we all look in the mirror, we don't say, well, the problem's me, right? That's not, but AI may tell us that. That's why I love
mhm,
the better definition of augmented intelligence, right? Because it'll expose that, hey, management, you made a mistake here. The
yeah,
workers were working with the wrong tools, so they weren't going to be as productive, so where we won't openly admit that on a project team. I
yeah.
shouldn't say we won't. It's hard to.
It's
Yeah.
hard to, and I think
Yeah.
that's another part of the human experience there.
Right.
You mentioned artificial intelligence. I'm gonna take just a moment here for our listeners and viewers and to remind them or introduce them to the Kurt Solutions Portal, CSP. So months ago, over 6 now, we linked up with the University of Cincinnati, and the Linder College of Business and their finest AI resources. And what we've done is we've taken all the Kurt body of knowledge. And when I talk about that, it includes presentations, white papers, recommendations, benchmarking surveys, articles in the Kurt Voice magazine, panel discussions, conference, PowerPoints, everything, over 30,000 independent elements.
Wow.
And we have assembled them into what today is referred to as the CSP, or the Kurt
Mhm.
Solutions portal. The interesting thing is it's free to every Kurt member for use. We test it weekly, and for a while there, we were testing it daily. It does not hallucinate or make up any kind of uh,
That's good. No
answer.
hallucination. Yeah.
Yeah, and we also have it available in multiple languages so that a craftsperson on a site could use it. We think of it as a consultant in your pocket, if you will, to give you augmented intelligence on questions that you would ask it, and it searches the entire. So oftentimes, you go to conferences, and our listeners and viewers will attest to this, and you see, people taking photographs of a particular slide. They
Yes.
come back to the office, and Nathaniel Sizemore, who spearheaded this for us, did a little research and indicated that 75% of that is never, ever used again. It
I
may be
agree.
sent out to somebody for an FYI, and they either
Yeah.
delete it or store it, and it doesn't get the effectiveness that both the presenter and the organization and the consumer, the attendee, wanted to have. Kurt Solutions Portal addresses this and gives you an opportunity to make available selective content based on your question. It helps you provide a better question if it's vague. We also have all the OSHA regulations in there.
Nice.
Pardon me. So if it's a safety question, it will cite the OSHA regs. If and in your answer, it also cites where it got the information. So if you wanted to do a deeper dive into who said what and who the presenter was or the author of the white paper, whatever it might be, it can do that. And it's free to all CURT members. There again, to our listeners and viewers, if you want to be introduced to the CURT Solutions portal or you'd like to become a part of CURT, just simply access the CURT.org website and find any of the emails listed there and the phone numbers listed there. And we'd be very happy to uh, to share with you what CURT could do with you and for you.
Yeah, Greg,
Well, yeah, go
I just
ahead.
got on that note, I've been receiving the special invite from Mr. Greg Sizemore for the AI conference coming up that you're doing
Yes,
here in Cincinnati. So
right.
I've shared that with my network, and I hope to have a handful of folks there that
Good.
can begin to learn more about the application of augmented intelligence in our industry. Yeah,
That's so true. And thank you for the plug there. And we look forward to having the Miller Valentine team and the Greg Fox impressive network context there. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and it's a
you're
journey.
welcome.
I like to use the metaphor of Lewis and Clark. We know where we are, but the Rocky Mountains are ahead. We don't know what's behind them. We know where we're trying to get to. And so we hold hands and go together. So it's a little bit of like the old Lewis and Clark expedition that Thomas Jefferson sent them out on to explore
So
this new territory that he had acquired. And we're in a new space. We're not backing up. It's not going away. We're in the fast lane of the highway, and we're riding lightning. We're riding lightning. It changes every week, and we're trying to help our members and the industry understand more so that we can use it better, be better, and have better projects as a result. Let me ask you this, Greg. In addition to
yeah.
AI, there's other technological advancement being made every day, whether it's a new software or machinery upgrades. Talk to us about how you and Miller Valentine are embracing technology. How do you do it? Where are your go-tos? Is it ENR? Is it Kurt? Is it all the above? Is it none of the above? How is Miller Valentine assuring that they're properly using the right technology for them and their purpose and their project?
Yeah, so we have a couple different methods that we're doing. One is we're part of CURT, right? We know they're always on the leading edge of project delivery models and how to manage safety. And how to use and apply AI. So we spend time at Kurt. We attend the conferences. We attend the regional meetings here in Cincinnati, I should say, the
Hmm.
regional items.
I
And then
understand.
we're part of LCI, Lean Construction
Mhm.
Institute. We're a corporate member there. And then we've got an internal system called MV Learn, and it is not all self-created. We deliberately tried to avoid recreating or reinventing the wheel, and we do a lot of connecting with other, training and information providers, data providers, and then we also have an IT lead that won't help you with your computer or your phone, but they are constantly linking all of our business warehouse data and analyzing, what we call our metrics, our big data, and they're looking at innovations in whether it be, contract items or, the smart contracts, and just constantly looking at how do we improve our productivity and performance, work process flow, through our accounting and accounts payable and, all of those systems. So our IT lead is really about innovation. But I will say, Greg, that
Love it.
we believe, right, that you first have to have a solid system, a work process, an understanding by the individual. In our industry, at least, not yet, does technology really replace people.
Yeah.
It complements the people that are working in our industry. And we spend a lot of time making sure that our systems are healthy, and then we seek out a innovative or a software or some type of other solution to enhance that work process. We don't rely on the system to train the people. We like our work process to be defined, build a more productive workflow around it. And that's the way we have been most successful with technology. Now, the other side that we feel very innovative about is our approach to the market, and how we write our contracts with our contractors, negotiating payment terms to try and
Mm.
get cash flow positive for us and our supply chain.
Mhm.
When we deal with owners with 120 payment day terms and 90 payment,
Keep
we,
going. You
well,
know what
we
I'm
don't,
talking about.
I know we don't always win, right? But we've been very successful on showing the business case, again, visibility into why this matters and
Hmm.
transparency for the owner to see. There's a good reason to pay people that are spending labor every day
Yes.
on a shorter period than 120 days, right?
Yeah.
And so we show that business case. So I feel like our innovation is more on the side of project delivery and how we share risk and reward with our contractors, how we give owners visibility into our pains and pressures that, is one of the first questions we talked about. Because when you have that understanding and being innovative in how to solve that, right? And not just applying what worked on the last project,
Right.
that's where our project teams innovate the best in the way that they think about delivering the project, how to involve a trade partner, when to involve the labor resources, and getting that right on the front end. Again, back to the front end so we can get off to a healthy start.
Mm.
That's where our innovation is successful.
Love that. So let me peel the onion just for a moment or two on
Yeah.
risk and reward. There's constantly this tug of war with owners and contractors, and risk is the rope in that tug of war. And
Mhm.
maybe it's not a tug as much as it is a push, trying to push the mashed potatoes around the plate. How do you feel? What do you feel? What process? What application? How do you really properly allocate risk and reward among the multiple stakeholders, and particularly among your owner client?
Yeah. So when I look at the risk of a project and creating its profile, what the first effort we do is we do what's called a risk registry to properly identify the buckets of risk.
Mm,
And then if we're involved very early, we look at, is this a contractual risk? Is this a commercial risk? Is this a safety risk? Is this a environmental risk? And then we openly discuss with the owner who is the best to manage this, right? Like if you're working in a current owner's facility and they've got a insurance policy, who's the right one to protect builder's risk?
hmm
Is it me that is the risk? Or is it the owner that has a policy and controls the way I work? And we've got clients that they buy their own builder's risk, right? Because they buy it less expensively. And then
Right.
they put the requirements on us to build safely so that the risk is mitigated, right? So,
Mm,
we like to break things into the right bucket and then assign the right person to manage it, right? Who should carry the risk of the market increasing? Do you want that built into my number? So I hedge and possibly pay too much, or you pay too much, or do you want to
Right.
share that risk? And we buy things at the right time when we know the scope and nobody's hedging or nobody's trying to pre buy or we're not waiting too long to buy. That risk should be a shared risk, right?
hmm
So we work closely in the contracting methodologies and use of consensus docs and IFOAs and more collaborative contracts that actually, they have the right risk in the right bucket, right? And then we make sure sometimes, right, that the risk is just spread across the project. Not one entity has to feel the pressure of all the market risks.
Right.
Normally that's put on the CM or the GC, but we're typically not the one buying most of the material. So I think understanding those buckets, having things like no fault clauses in your contract, knowing that you're hiring competent contractors in your selection process that are working for the betterment of the project, so you can have contracts that don't just pass down risk, they
Mhm.
appropriately apply risk to the right party. Because many times, if we have to protect for the market, we do that with money. We
Yeah.
increase our price. When
Right.
in reality, that may be a windfall for us in the end.
hmm
But if we appropriately share that risk, normally and typically it ends up being less cost for the owner. So,
Good.
yeah.
Like that.
Yep.
So let's talk safety. You mentioned that a few times. What are the new
hmm
developments in safety, and how does safety play into the lean project delivery approach?
Yeah. So, in the lean world, safety is focused on number one, behavior. So, we're always looking at, and in a lean world, you want to have and establish a strong project culture. And when we look at safety, many, many incidents that occur when you get to the root cause, Greg, unfortunately, and this is where some people are reluctant to participate and don't want to hear this, it's the individual that made a bad choice,
Yeah.
right? That is very common what happened. And if we can expose that, and if we can create a culture where behaviors are noticed, they're recognized both negative and positive, so that we're getting our project teams to think, is this the right tool? Should I really be drilling this hole without my glasses, even though they're half a mile away? And that's where management comes in. Are you making the items available? Are you protecting and providing the right PPE and making sure it's readily available for your workers? So, but the behavior in the lean world and creating that culture of open discussion, open feedback, critiquing when you do make a mistake, right?
hmm
Having a focus on behaviors in the lean world is what we have found really increases the safe and reliable site that the individual can go home as they showed up at work. And many times they go home better because they learn something every day, whether it be
Yeah.
about PPE or how not to take a risk, right? Or how to get a buddy to help you. You know what I mean? Because that's not
Uh,
in our industry, right? It's not natural to say, "Hey, can you come hold my ladder while I climb this?"
yeah.
That's something you hear a lot. You know what I mean?
Especially from the
So,
guys. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so we think focus on behaviors and a true culture where everybody is participating. Our safety managers are not police. They are
Right.
not they are not enforcers, right? They are identifying, observing, and making sure that the culture is right for the worker to be safe.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, let's talk. We've been talking from the very first moment, nearly 45 minutes ago, about the people and how this is a people business, how trust
Mhm.
is huge. One of the startling statistics that we've begun to grapple with, and it varies from resource to resource, but several years ago, 7, 10 years ago, there were 11 to 14% of women in the construction industry workforce.
Mhm.
Today, all these years later, it's still 11 to 14%, depending on which source you cite. We've got
Mhm.
50% women in the country. We got a workforce shortage. We've got great industry with great pay, great benefits, and the safety's never been better. The respect's never been higher. What's going on? How
Yeah.
can we make this business more attractive to women? And I know Miller Valentine has a unique perspective on this because of its leadership team. Talk to us a little bit about
Mhm.
the women in construction challenge that
Mhm.
the industry is having.
Yeah. So number one, as you stated, we're a woman-owned business, right? Woman-owned business enterprise. Our CEO and our majority owner is Elizabeth Mangan, and she's committed to this, and she's part of many networks, and she champions this throughout our company. Our executive team, I think, is more around what you see in the population. It's fifty
Yeah,
fifty
great.
women and men. But I will say we, as well as the industry, have a long way to go on the craft worker, right? I believe if we could look at that data a little differently and see the progress we've made on the management side, and then how do we apply that on the craft and the supervisor side, or
Yeah,
call it the field
the
staff?
field in the field.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So, because on the management side, in the engineering world, right? I believe that 11 to 14% is probably could be much higher.
Yeah,
I don't have the data, Greg, but I'm thinking it is because we have several women across our PMs and Miss Rebecca Schaefer, who she worked closely with Kurt to do some things on the
yeah,
woman leadership course and brought them to our project and tried to show them all the different trades and roles that are available for a woman, right? And it doesn't stop. As you work through the organization, there's a lot of need in the craft world. And I really believe, Craig, it's just about understanding of the roles that are available, which
mhm,
is what Elizabeth and Rebecca and them are off leading. They go to local schools, they speak at universities, and they talk about our industry is called construction, right? But there is finance, there is innovation, there is HR, there is logistics, there you can run across every degree possibly. There's psychology, right? I mean,
yeah,
how many times are you dealing with people that you have to use to solve the problem, right? You have to
right.
leverage their expertise. So there, I believe it starts with understanding more about our industry, which I believe organizations like Kurt, LCI, universities are still a great outlet for that, right? They're doing a good job there. Um, but I believe that the jobs are opening up even in the craft area, right? Where it's not you got to be the down and dirty construction worker. There's a lot of roles in the field that the guys go home as clean as when they showed up, you know? So
Yeah.
a lot of work to do there, but those are some of the tactics I'd say that our company is doing. And luckily we've got an owner, CEO that is actively engaged in all of this. And she builds that down our throughout our entire organization.
Yeah, she sure does. And you mentioned Kurt's involvement. You know, we saw years ago the need, or not only a need, but an opportunity, you know, to
Right.
really get that up, even if it's 20%, there's a delta to go to, 30, 40, and 50%. And most recently, with Dr. Gretchen Gago, we started the Women in Construction Initiative that is a
Yes.
very systemic cohort of education, insight, resourcing the ladies, um, personal development, coaching, mentoring, inspiring,
Yes.
reading about successes. So we're real proud of our Women in Construction Initiative,
Yeah.
and really Miller Valentine has done a whale of a job and picking up
Well,
the cause and running
that's
with it.
where
So,
you mentioned inspiration.
yeah,
Rebecca, through that initiative, has been inspired and really met some great friends
yeah,
from that initiative when she attended in Chicago and brought them all back to Cincinnati. And
right,
yeah, she's been breaking down barriers, if you will, since that event. So I
yeah.
it's great to see. Yeah.
It sure is, and I think we're going to get there, and um, the ladies in our population are going to have a wonderful opportunity to pursue any aspect of construction they would like to pursue. Let me move back to safety for just a minute.
Yeah.
In recent years, the industry, and certainly Kurt, has begun to open the dark closet and pull out the issue of mental wellness, which is
Hmm.
a pretty way of saying suicide prevention. Uh,
Hmm.
it is one of the leading causes of death in construction. I heard a statistic the other day from one of our speakers that said over 1,000 people are injured every year in construction related incidents, physically injured. 5,000 a year take their lives. And there's a lot of contributing
It's
causes,
terrible.
schedules that are 610s, 710s, remote work, whether you're dragging a trailer or living in a remote location, and a lack of community. And then there's the whole, "I got this, give me my way, get out of my way, don't bother me." That approach that really doesn't work. It's not healthy. The lone wolf is
Hmm.
the sickest in the forest,
Yes.
and they die early. And so that whole lone wolf, "I'll do it myself, give me my way, get out of my way," doesn't work. What has Miller Valentine done in their safety initiative? Because I know you're cutting edge, outstanding company. What have you done to address the whole concept of mental wellness slash suicide
Yeah.
prevention?
Yeah. So one simple thing, Greg, is we have a culture of respect for people. That comes from lean
Mhm,
and also just from being a good human, right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so and I'm sure a lot of companies offer this, but on the benefit side, we have policies and programs that help with that, and that's for the autonomy if you want to keep that. And
Yeah.
but what else we do, and I'll go back to, a successful project and getting off to a healthy start. We, our people feel that community. They
Mhm,
feel
mm,
they connect with the project team. And we don't do it through just, typical team building events and, things like that. We do that. Those are good, right? But we also have deliberate mentoring. Um, we let folks know that, their contribution is recognized. We have programs that recognize individuals every month against our core values. We we give, you know spot recognition on projects for culture. You hear a lot about that for safety, right?
Right.
But
That's right.
on a lot of our projects, we have a spot recognition program that says, hey, we have these conditions of satisfaction that we created for the project. One of them was, to always be aware of your surroundings.
Mm.
And I see you doing that. That drives a culture, right? And we give them a culture award, so they know that what they're doing is recognized, it's noticed, and it's part of building that bigger community of the project. Because that's a project is a community. It's
Right.
got some transient people, some come in and they leave, and so having that culture, especially with the way we transition from groundbreaking to getting out of the ground to steel to electric to mechanical, having that culture as the common thread across all of that, and letting those individuals know that they're just as important as the last trade, that's the way we do it. I must say though, Greg, we don't have a direct, I'll call it, mental health program like some other companies have,
Mhm.
but we have bits and pieces that we believe are a common thread throughout projects, throughout our company, right? That are building the culture that we want. And we hope and pray that we're minimizing
Yeah.
that from happening, right? And we're pretty successful there. We're doing our project teams, most of them leave, right, saying, I want to work here again. Not
Yeah.
all, but
Wonderful.
most.
Yeah.
So and the way we do that is, when you think about cost to a project, right? Most people always say cost is the dollars and cents. You have to reduce those costs. You got to contain those costs. And
Hmm.
we also know that, Covey's law, the speed of trust.
Hmm.
If our
Hmm.
project teams can create an environment where they can trust each other, right? And they can work in a workflow that is efficient, that you actually end up, right? You get high trust, you get faster speed, and you get lower cost. And then what else you get is you have team health that is not a detriment to the project. And
Hmm.
and if
Hmm.
you impact the cost of team health, it's devastating because you're moving people in and out, people are quitting, contractors don't want to work for you.
Right.
And I just can't stress enough that team health is one of the ways of controlling cost, schedule, how we feel at the end of a project, the mental health of the individuals, right? Because a successful project is something they can be proud of. And
Yeah.
and,
That
and we
that is
focus
so
a lot
true.
on that. Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing. Mental well being or mental wellness involves community, involves visioning, involves inspiring, involves resources, involves
Hmm.
employee assistance programs, and involves respect and validation and recognition, and all those components. That's
Hmm.
all part of what I've seen of an effective mental wellness program with any
Yeah.
organization. So hats off
Yeah.
to you for that.
And I guess the way I'd summarize it, Greg, is we work on prevention
Yes.
and not
Yeah.
and not treatment, right?
Yeah.
Treatment's there. We know treatment is needed. Sometimes it
Mhm.
it is the answer. But if we can avoid treatment, I think we've been successful. Not to say that that's a failure either. That's not what I mean by that. You know
Right.
what I mean?
I understand. Yeah.
But if we have systems in place that are trying to prevent that, it creates that culture that we're looking for.
I think that's terrific, and I agree with you 100%. As we begin to wind down our time together, one
Yeah.
of the last questions I have is, if you could change a behavior or something that's deeply ingrained in our industry on the owner side or on the contractor side in order to
Yep.
improve the project outcome, what would that be? Let's start with the owner side first. If you were king for the day and there was
Mhm.
one thing that you could change that would have a lasting impact on project effectiveness from the owners, gonna ask contractor in a minute, what would it be?
Yeah, mine would be, um, there's a couple, if you don't mind, instead of just
No,
one.
that's good. Yeah,
One
you're good.
is the networking that is available.
Hmm.
Many owners, very successful owners, I believe could be better if they were engaged in CURT and LCI and CII and CMAA and, you know, PDA and Lean IPD, organizations, IPDA, and those those networks and that connection for like companies, or they're invaluable. So
Yeah,
that's
they
one
sure are.
thing where I think, an increase in CURT membership, and I don't mean that as a plug, would benefit them, would
Hmm.
benefit us, and benefit the industry.
Yeah.
But the main thing that I look at across the CapEx program and then rolling down to a project is, many years ago when I was at P&G, we had three what we called alliance contractors. Mr. Bob Volkman, you remember? God bless
I
his
do.
soul, right? He
Yeah.
he he taught me that those alliances were invaluable. And
Right.
we had three contractors that literally did in the US, called $1 billion of work a year back 25 years ago
Yeah.
or more. And they were truly an alliance contractor. They were a partner. They got brought to the table early. They contributed to the CapEx program, not just individual projects. And if an owner is open to bringing these organizations together and working on that front end, definition of what they want, what the business drivers are, getting clarity on how to deliver those business drivers, I want to be part of CapEx programs that work that way.
Mm.
And we've got two owners right now that we call, key accounts, if you will, not to let them know how important we think they are, but we remind them all the time. And we get that chance. We're at the table in the beginning. We're helping them select sites. We're helping them design their building. We're figuring out how their equipment fits into the building to make sure we're not overbuilding, or we're able to expand in the future. The approach to making sure that the $1 that we spend on capital reduces the $10 that they spend on putting stuff in it. And then it reduces even more the $100 that they spend when they operate within their facility. And if we can get involved on that front end to reduce that 10 and 100, the one could even cost two. You could double the capital costs and probably have a better life cycle cost for the rest of your facilities in the 10 and the 100. And
Yeah.
the owners that get that, if owners can realize that the dollar they're spending on capital to reduce the 10 and 100 is a better return on investment, even if you spend, like I said, 1.5, or, and the owners that get that, and I call them smart owners, Greg.
Yeah.
I refer to them as smart owners. When they spend that dollar with the intent of reducing the 10 and 100, they end up with a better project, a better program. And those are the owners that we seek out. And if all owners could approach things that way, or more owners, the industry would be more successful.
Wow, that's a mouthful. That's a whole nother podcast right there. And maybe we'll reschedule and bring some more guys and gals to the party to discuss return on investment and uh yeah, where to spend your time, talent, and treasure. That's great.
Yeah.
What about on the contractor side? If you could wave the magic wand, what would you change on with your colleagues?
Yeah. The contractor side mostly is, I hear many times contractors talking about, well, the owner don't trust me.
Right.
And then they pass that down, right? And instead of showing the owner how to trust by trusting our supply chain, they then, in return of not being trusted by the owner, don't trust the trade partners, or
Oh,
don't
yeah,
respect the trade
yeah,
partners. And we have an approach at Miller Valentine that I call power with. And many of our peers and many of, I'll just call out the big guys, Greg. They go to the owner and say, "You can't do this project without me." We go to the owner and say, "You can't do this project without us." And we bring
Uh,
the whole team. And we have our role, right? And we have power over some of our trade partners, right? Because there's different relationships on different projects. But
well, that's right. Hmm.
on the contractor side, if contractors can get together and understand the power that each of them bring and the quality and the capability and the capacity that each of them bring to the table with respect for that and share that with the owner, right? That we are a team. It's not me over the supply chain, or because many owner or many contractors go to the owner and talk about, well, without me, you won't get the leverage in the market. And I'm not sure leverage always delivers results.
Yeah.
Leverage, it creates attention, but sometimes it can deliver adverse effects when you
Hmm.
apply leverage to a trade partner, especially in today's market, Greg, because I don't know any trade partners with people sitting on the bench.
Yeah. Me
And
either. Mm-mm.
I don't know any. So if
Even the
you
B
approach,
team is out and
yeah,
about.
yes. So if you approach them aggressively, right, they have options,
Yeah.
and that's not our style. We look at them truly as trade partners. It took me a few years to get it through here, but we no longer refer to them as subcontractors. That's not what they are. They're
Right.
experts. When you talk to a design build electrical company, Greg, if you really sit down and listen to them and what they're trying to do, or a mechanical or a concrete companies like Baker and Lithco, and when you really sit down and work with them, it's amazing what they come up with.
Oh,
So that's what I think contractors need to change. We're all in this together. There
right.
is no architect or engineer or GC or CM or electrical or mechanical contractor that can do this alone. And until we embrace that, right, our industry will continue to, see some issues that we see today.
Yeah, boy. Wow. That's another podcast. So, yeah, you got all kinds of ideas here. Hey, is there a question that I didn't ask that you thought I would, or something you want to share with our listeners that has been on your mind and heart before we started? We just didn't tap into it. I want to give you a
Yeah,
chance to
I think, Greg, the one
have the
we
last
hinted
word.
at, yeah, and I'd like to add a few comments to it is we've got workforce shortages, right?
Yeah, boy.
And the other thing is we've got an industry that has, since I've been around since 1992, I don't have the exact data, but if you look at the curve of the cost in construction since I entered the industry in 1992, um, has it ever gone down in that time?
No,
The answer is no.
no.
So when owners look at, the VUCA world we live in and the way things are changing, and if you want to go in and have certainty in delivering your project, right? Involving partners at the beginning, having a selection process of trust and building reliability and predictability across that project. Then you're going to find that the resources you need are actually attracted to your project. They're not
Mm,
running away from it. And the best approach to reduce workforce shortages is owners to understand that they are working with the construction industry, not against it. And if
yeah.
they approach that market like they're working against it, they will get resistance and they will see work shortages and they will
Mhm.
see problems on their projects and schedule delays. If they approach it as we're your partner and we need you, and we want to eliminate the volatility and uncertainty and ambiguity, right? If they approach it that way, the resources will attract to their project. And that's what we see in how we approach our trade partners, right? We invite them to participate. We don't put leverage on them to participate, right?
Right.
And I think, to reduce those workforce shortages, you have to have an attraction mechanism And
Yeah.
many owners, they don't have an attraction mechanism. They have a shield around them saying, I don't trust you and I don't trust your number. And they even say the word, you're lying to me. You know what I mean? It's like, are you kidding me? You know what I
Right.
mean? So, and the other thing is that, contractors have to make money, Greg.
Yeah.
I'll end with that. If we don't make
100%.
money, we don't exist. So
Right.
the ones that want to reduce your fee and all that, you know what I mean? If we don't make money, we don't exist. And
And if you
owners,
don't exist, we're living in caves.
yes, that's right.
And not only
And
living in caves, there's no place to
we're,
go to work. So we're
there's
that's
no
why
place
when
to do,
Kurt was
no
formed,
place to do surgery. There's no,
no
you know what I
place
mean?
to
Yeah.
do anything. That's why
Yeah.
when I formed Kurt many years ago, it was vital that we included in our initiatives our contract. We called them associates,
Right.
and we've lived that. And then, of course, even later there was a role for labor to play. So yeah,
Yeah.
we have been having a wonderful discussion with my friend Greg Fox, who's Vice President of Lean Construction, Miller Valentine here in Cincinnati, a general contractor, highly regarded in the region, and cutting edge on so many areas that you've heard about here today. And Greg, we just want to take this moment and thank you for your time. I know you've got tons to do today, but you've carved out time to not only serve Kurt, but the industry with your, again, resources, perspectives, and experiences. And what you've delivered is exactly what we wanted to glean from you. So thank you very much, Greg, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Greg, you're welcome. And again, my journey of influencing the industry, right, to be more collaborative, respecting everybody, connecting the silos, right? That's what we want to do as an industry. A lot of expertise, and we want to work together. Appreciate it, Greg.
Love that. You bet. You've been listening to Construction Connections, powered by Kurt. We'll see you next time.